Welcome to the Tinyhawk III Disassembly video brought to you by Drones in School. For this disassembly, you're going to need a small Phillips screwdriver and a permanent marker. We're going to start off with our Phillips screwdriver. Holding on the camera canopy is 4 small Phillips screws. We're going to remove those. When you remove those screws, make sure you put them in a safe place. Don't want those to bounce around. They're really small, so if you drop them, you're probably not going to find them. So once we remove those screws, we will have our canopy and our camera released. Now, it is hardwired into the flight controller, so you can't really pull it away, so be careful with that. Once you move the canopy a little bit, you can see the connectors for the brushless motors. There are 4 brushless motors, therefore 4 connectors on the flight controller. On those connectors is a little edge that you can kind of get your fingernail in between and pry those a little bit and just pop them loose. Be careful to not pull on the wires. If you can't use your fingernail, you may be able to find a small regular screwdriver that you could use to kind of reach underneath that lip and pull that. Again, do not pull on the wires. You want to just pull on the connector itself. Carefully pry those loose, support that flight controller while you're pulling. Once those 4 are disconnected, we'll be ready for our next step. So now the only thing holding this flight controller in is the battery pigtail on the bottom, which is held in place by the battery tray, which also has 4 small Phillips screws holding it in. So we'll remove those screws and pop that tray off. Now there's a little bit of a clamp or catch on the back of plastic, so we're just going to bend those a little bit. It's not all the way enclosed. We're just going to kind of spring it out of the way and release that wire from the battery tray. Be a little bit careful with this process. You don't want to jerk or pull that pigtail because you're going to release it from the flight controller. But if you're a little bit careful, you can pull that battery tray out and set it aside. At this point, you should be able to remove the camera canopy and the flight controller. Now, for Drones in School, we do not require you to replace the camera canopy to compete. You can use the stock canopy and stock camera. However, if you wanted to remove that, you could use a small hex head driver. I think it's a 1.5 millimeter to remove those screws that hold the camera. So now we're ready to take a look at our frame. This is the part that we'll actually be re-engineering to compete in the Drones in School program. High school students will recreate the entire frame. Middle school students just have to build an attachment. Now, before we remove those motors, just to make reassembly a little simpler, we're going to mark 2 of those motors on the diagonal where they are on the frame. So just take our little permanent marker and mark 2 of the props, color 2 of the props and color 2 of the connectors there on the frame where the motors are attached. Now we can remove, there's 3 Phillips head screws. Now these are a little different screws. These are a traditional machine thread instead of a plastic thread. So we want to put those aside, but make sure you don't get them mixed up with the other screws. They are a different kind of screw. Then we can just carefully pull that motor lead through the frame. Now when you pull that through the frame, you kind of have to go towards the center of the frame where it's widest, so that connector will pop through the little supports that hold everything together. Once you take all those screws out, you've got your motors out. There's your 4 motors, your flight controller and camera and frame, and you're all set. Hope you have fun.